السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله تعالى من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. إنه من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وخليله. بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وكشف الله به الغمة وأزال به الظلمة وتركنا على المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. صلوات ربي وسلامه عليه وعلى آله وصحبه والتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. إخوة الإيمان, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, today it's going to be a very brief session, and subhanallah, the topic we're going to be discussing today has to do with something that has to do with the teachers of the Quran, the people who participate or who are the role players in learning Quran or teaching Quran to young children. So the topic of the discussion today is, what is an ideal Quran learning system for children? And an ideal Quran learning system for children is something that's comprehensive and that will give the children or the students the desired goal and the desired environment for them to thrive and to be a continuous learner of the Quran. They have 4 components, so that's the first thing we're going to discuss, the 4 components of an ideal Quran learning system. The first one is the parents, right? The parents, or I call them the environment. So the environment includes the parents and the community where the child is learning the Quran. So that's the environment. So the environment includes the home environment, has to do with the parent and the people living in the house of the child, and as well the community where the child is living and learning the Quran from as well. And the second component of the Quran learning system is the child itself, the student itself. The student himself or herself learning the Quran is a key role player in an ideal Quran learning system. And I think this is something a lot of people have step aside and put it aside. They don't think the parent has a role to play. Even like trying to teach the kids the Quran. Who are you trying to teach the Quran? Is it not the student, the kids themselves? So they have a role, they have a significant role to play in making the goal a successful one, right? So we have to put them into consideration and put them as a key role player in the system itself. And the third component is the teacher, right? The teacher also plays a very important role in the Quran, learning system for young children. And the fourth component is the teaching method. So the teaching method, the way in which the Quran is being taught to the kids, and how the class is being organized, if it has to do with teaching many students at the same time, or you're teaching just one child at the same time, not any other student together with that child. So the system has to do with the content delivery method, and the content you're teaching the child, the children themselves, the contents of the Quran that you're teaching them, and how do you plan this teaching sequence, the content sequence, and also the combination of the students in the class or in the session that you're teaching. You have kids of the same age group or not the same age group, or kids of the similar level of Quran reading or recitation or memorization. So basically there are 4 major components of the Islam Quran learning system for young children. So I'll repeat myself again. So we have the students, the children themselves. They are an important component of the system, which we don't normally put into consideration many oftentimes. And the second component is the teacher, right? The teacher plays a key role in the system itself. Now we have the environment. So the environment includes the parents. So we see like the parent is included in the environment. So because the parents is the family, the home environment. And also the environment also includes the community where the child is living. How do they perceive and celebrate the Quran, right? And the fourth component is the method, the teaching method. So we shouldn't take these 4 components of an ideal Quran learning system for granted, right? So let's talk about these are the components. So what are the challenges of each of these components? We we are in a tough situation these days where we have a decline in interest in learning Quran. We have a decline in interest to behave like a Muslim, among the kids. Especially when you have them, grown up, being in high schools, being in colleges. People have this kind of identity crisis. They want to associate themselves to be a Muslim on campus or within their peers, and because a lot of Islamophobic attacks and a lot of bias towards Muslims and Muslim kids in schools and all that. Right? So there is a challenge, and how do we revive this identity crisis? How do we revive this identity among the kids and the next generation of Muslims? Right? So there are crises, there are problems with each of this component of the Quran learning system for young children. So let's talk about the challenges of the environment itself. So let's talk about the challenges of the child itself, the challenges of the children themselves, which are the major, role players in this system, because they are the one that we want to teach, right? We want to teach them. We want the child to become fluent Quran reader. We want the child to become an hafiz. But you don't put the child into consideration while planning the Quran learning system for the child. So the child or the students who are the children who are learning the Quran, so what are those challenges they are facing right now? So I mentioned three challenges which the children are facing. Why? And if the children are facing these challenges and if we couldn't overcome these challenges, then the Quran learning system is going to be in a mess, right? So the first challenge is that the children are not aware of the benefits of learning the Quran. I've had some students, and like this, again, the very common questions I've had parents saying the children are asking them at home, and we try to kind of cover that gap during our classes for mostly adult students, right? So they ask themselves, why are we learning the Quran? What's the purpose of learning the Quran? Many of them say it's because my dad asked me to learn it, right? Because my mom asked me to learn it. So they don't even know the reason. They don't have any benefit attached to learning the Quran originally, right? So this is something we have to work on, right? We have to work on this. So the children are not, well acquainted or not well equipped with knowledge about the benefit of the Quran in their lives. They don't even know the reason why they're doing that. Right? So the second, challenge the kids or the students are facing is the peer group influence. I think we had a webinar on this topic earlier about, how to use the power of the Quran, to overcome the negative peer influences on our kids. Right? So if the child is in a bad company, especially if a child, maybe grown-up kids or even younger kids that are in middle school or in elementary schools, they have friends who are doing something else apart from the Quran, and like they see their own peers, their own, this kid will see their own peers not using all their time learning the Quran, learning to read the Quran, or they don't give any kind of importance to the Quran. So the child who's learning the Quran will feel like, what am I doing, right? My peers are not doing this stuff, so what am I doing? So this is a very big challenge. How do you cope it? How do you avoid it? How do you help to, ameliorate or reduce that kind of influence on your child or the children learning the Quran, right? So the peer influence is a very big factor that once it has too much effect on the child, their interest and motivation to learn the Quran is going to decline right away. So, lack of perception of benefits among the children learning the Quran, those are the students, right? And also bad peer influence, negative peer influence, right? And the third challenge that the kids might be facing is because of the environment that they have, right? So they have, even might not be just the friends or their peers, it might just be the atmosphere in the environment, right? Right? People attacking Muslims, calling people different kind of names, so people don't feel comfortable to be Muslims, or they don't want to, like, they want to do something else that's going to bring them joy, right? So they want to just learn music, right? Or they want to learn something that's apart from the Quran, right? So they're not interested. It's not that because of lack of not knowing the benefit or the peer influence, but because of they have another interest in something else, right? And there are reasons for that. We're going to talk about that later on. We're going to talk about the challenges of the environment, right? So the children are facing the challenge of lack of perception of benefits, right? They don't know what's the benefit of learning the Quran. They are affected by their peer, by their peer influence, negative peer influence, and also their own desires, the things that they desire to have or to do, right? Just completely different from the Quran. So they give more attention to that stuff, compared to that of the Quran. Right? So let's talk about the challenges of the teachers, right? Which are one of the major components of the system. So the teachers are so very essential. So what are the challenges? So today, one of the most liberated field of teaching today is teaching the Quran. There's no any regulation, right? There's no any regulation about who is to teach the Quran, who's not to teach the Quran. That's how we find ourselves today, right? Surely everyone's just gonna come online and say I can teach Quran, I can teach Quran. There's no any way to verify to authenticate someone who can teach the Quran or not able to teach the Quran, right? So we have to make sure that this is a challenge. So the parents who doesn't even know how to read the Quran or he doesn't know who is qualified or not qualified, right? So they will just ask, oh, I need a Quran tutor, someone is going to refer them to someone, and they don't know how to verify, the certification or the qualification of that person, and they just, oh, this is my Quran teacher for my child. That's all right. So this is a big challenge which a lot of parents are facing, and we have to solve this problem, right? Not everyone can is qualified to teach the Quran. Then themselves need to learn and continue learning to become an expert Quran reader themselves, right? So there are ways that's been designed around this, where people are given ijaza or verify the person before you enroll your child to make sure, okay, where does this person learn from? What are some of the references of this person that you want to put your child to learn from? So the issue of qualification and verification of capability to learn Quran and education of the teacher itself. So this is something that has to be worked on. So it's a challenge. And if poor quality teachers are teaching Quran, there's going to be a lot of problem in the system, right? So the quality of the teachers and also the mobility of the teachers as well. People would want to have teachers who are very close to them in their vicinity, right, in their locality. That's really excellent, right? But you have situations where you don't have enough teachers around you, like who can perfectly teach a child Quran. That becomes a big challenge, right? So the scarcity of teachers, the mobility issues, right, is a component of teachers are a very good component of the system, which is so very essential, right? And if there's a problem with one of the components of the Quran learning system, there's going to be problems all over the place, right? So the teachers, as we don't have qualified and verified teachers, people have to turn on to some quality or not qualified people to teach their kids Quran. This is a big challenge, right? And even if you have situations of people who have if they are teachers, but the teachers are somewhere, they're somewhere else where you are not, and that brings up the mobility issues of people who would come to your house to teach your kids, or people who are available at the masjid to teach your kids the Quran. So that's a big challenge. And subhanAllah, the online environment is kind of, filling the vacuum today. So no matter where you are, you can learn the Quran or ask your child to enroll in, or enroll your child in any of those youth programs that are out there where you have a lot of wonderful teachers teaching the Quran, right? So we have a lot of wonderful expert teachers, across the globe online, giving out your services, but you must do your own homework and verify the quality of the teacher you're putting your kids to learn the Quran as well. So the teacher is a very essential component of the Quran learning system that we have to watch over, right? So the third component, which I mentioned, is the environment. So what are the challenges of the environment? These are very essential components. People do not think about it sometimes. They're like, oh yeah, I just need the Quran teacher. They don't have a deep thinking about what's going on. What do we need to do? How do we get an ideal Quran learning step on track? So the environment is another factor. And I classify the environment into two parts. I said the home environment and the community itself. So what's the challenge that the home environment is putting into the system? What are some of the obstacles that the home environment has? So the parents. So if the parents are not putting priorities over Quran learning, then the child will not feel that kind of urgency, the need to do that, to pay more attention onto it, right? Because if the child is want to learn this Quran and the parent knows, so we want to, the parents will tell the child that you have to go and do this so training, you want to go and swim, or you want to go play football or do some other things. So they give more priorities to many other activities over the Quran. So that kind of bring kind of a sense of a sense of not more essential components, right? It brings in a sense of more importance to the child. Oh, this stuff is not really that great important. That's why mom is not I can leave the Quran and go and do something else, right? So it has to do with the way the parents, the family are taking the Quran. Because a lot of people think the Quran is not that necessary for a child to live a successful life, which we are getting that wrong. if you are Muslims and want to live a peaceful life as Muslims, brothers and sisters, I keep saying this, I've said this in many of my khutabs, many of my sermon I've given across the programs here. I talked about, the benefit of the Quran and what's the solution to our, current situation we have, people committing suicide, people having depression, despite all the money they've earned, despite all the good professions they have, and they are rich, they have all the money. Is that not what we are pursuing in this life? What is committing suicide? They are still not happy. So what's the solution? What's the solution to this? We can't get solutions from the doctor. We can't get solutions from the politicians. We can't get solutions from ourselves. We have to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who created every one of us. And if the child doesn't have that kind of perception of who to turn to, you don't teach them the Quran, then it becomes a big challenge for them to control the emotions whenever they grow up. It's become very difficult for them to control their heart situation whenever they find themselves in tough situations. How do they react? How do they deal with that? And the Quran has those kind of benefits. So the Quran is like you giving a child water to drink or giving them food to eat. That's how we have to take it so very important. It's like any other thing that you give the child. So you give them quality education. The Quran is like a food. Compare your Quran reading and learning to the food you give the child, the clothing you give the child, the water and all basic needs of life that you give your child. The Quran is the same as those kind of necessities like I mentioned. So we have to take this so serious. So if the parent is not taking learning the Quran as a priority to the child's life or to the children's life, then that becomes a problem. That's a challenge, right? And the second part is the community. So the community you live in, if there's no any kind of appraiser, there's no any kind of status identification for people who teach the Quran or who are expert Quran readers. You have societies where people do not even they discourage people from listening to scholars, or they don't want, their child to become, an imam, or they don't want their child to become, an Islamic scholar, or they see Islamic scholars, people who are not so important in the society, that they have no qima, they have no value to the society, right? If it's those kind of society we live in, that's going to transfer to the system and affect whatever we're planning in the system. So we as Muslims, we want to create a good environment for our kids. So whenever we are deciding on where to live, we must make sure we live in a society, maybe where there's a masjid. And that masjid, for instance, they organize a weekly or yearly Quran memorization competition among the kids in the society, in the community. That's a very good community to live, right? So we want to live around Muslims, right? If you are not able to do that, Allah Alam, there are online opportunities for you to do that today, but it might not be as those of the physical environment, right? But the online environment can also solve some part of it. Like we have in my academy, we're going to be having some monthly, competitions and, prize reward for kids doing great in our program. So this is a kind of a substitute for online, physical environment or community activities, right? So the environment is so essential. There's one component. This component is so very essential, right? I talked about the effect of the environment, the classroom environment earlier, but I haven't talked about the effect of the external, outside the classroom environment. So that has to do with, the parents, right, and also the community the kids is living, right? The community the child is living. So if the parents are not attaching some kind of significance to learning the Quran, then boom, everything is going to be just, downgrading, right? The child is not going to take it so serious because the parents are not taking it so serious as well, right? And if the community they're living in, they always discourage and belittle people who are Quran scholars or Islamic scholars, or if there's no any kind of activities that kind of sensitize and increase the motivation of the kids to learn the Quran in this kind of environment, in this kind of community where the child is living, then that would be a big challenge. That's why you see many Muslim communities across the globe, countries now. I mean, like in Saudi Arabia, in Iraq, you see they organize yearly Quran competition. These are ways to motivate kids because, and they give the good performers, right? Those who perform very well, they give them prizes and very exorbitant and very costly gifts, right? So that's the way to motivate the kids. So you see someone who's getting you know all these millions of dollars, right? All these thousands of reals, or whatever they give them, all this beautiful gift they give them, right? This is a very good way to kind of increase the morale of the kids and the children learning the Quran. You give those who perform well in their Quran reading, learning, memorization, give them very good gift to them. They attach more importance. So we have to create this kind of community in our own area as well, so that we can make a good last one, which is very broad, we have challenges with the teaching method as well. So I made mention of four components. I said the students, or those are the learners, right? The kids, the environment, the teachers, and the learning methods, or the teaching methods. So people do not take this so very seriously as well. The teaching components, the teaching methods, uh, is a very essential component of the Quran learning system as well. Like people think, and that all kind of get down to identifying the good teacher, right? Or the good teacher. Sometimes you have a good teacher, but if the teacher is part of a bad teaching system, so for instance, the teacher is part of a school system, but the teacher himself or herself is a good teacher, but the way the curriculum was designed in the school that she is teaching the Quran or he's teaching the Quran is not good, so it's going to reflect in there as well. So the teaching method and the curriculum is so essential. And I can't completely mention this. I've talked about these teaching methods that we apply in our academy. I'm not saying we are perfect, but we've tried to kind of evaluate the kids across these years, over these years we're teaching the Quran, and we try to come up with a curriculum that we think is much appropriate for kids and that will help them become fluent Quran readers in a very short period of time. Right? So the teaching method is so very essential. We talk about getting to know what to teach the child at different ages, right? And how to teach, the teaching methods or the teaching way. How do you teach children of different age group, right? And then how do you what are the contents that you teach them, and what are the sequence of how the contents to taught to the kids, and how do you deliver the lessons to them as well? Like these days now, people can deliver your Quran lessons through different platforms, right? You can use all of the modern techniques that are being used right now in all those secular schools. You can use that same system to teach the Quran. That also kind of strengthen the belief of the child. Oh, Quran learning is not just something very easy like that. It's not something not that important, because the teacher themselves who are teaching Quran are using the same system that's being used in the schools that they go to as well. Right? So the teaching method or the teaching method is a very essential component of the Quran learning system for children. Like how the curriculum outlined, what time or what age, and how do you teach children of different ages, right? Or if you're teaching children in groups, how do you group them? Do you group them based on just on ages, or you group them based on their level of expertise of Quran reading? So you don't want to group kids that already have some knowledge of Quran recitation and reading together with kids that are just starting, right? So the kids that are just starting will feel so very overwhelmed and feel so very belittled in the class, because they can't answer any of the questions you might be asking the older kids or the kids that are more further, above them in the Quran, learning skills, right? So you don't want to put kids together who are of, different qualities or different levels of recitation. No matter, some kids, they might be 10 years old and they haven't learned anything with the Quran. You don't want to just put those kind of kids, because they're 10 years old, and want to put them with kids that are 8 years old who already knew more Quran reading skills. You don't want to do that. So majorly, you want to group kids based on their Quran reading skills, or Quran reading fluency level. That's how you want to group a class. So there's a lot to discuss about the teaching methods, which I'll be taking each of all these company system one after the other, inshallah, as Allah permits and Allah make us be those who will continue to exist on the surface of the earth until Allah will take us all to unto Him. And if we are still alive, bi'idhnillah, we inshallah try to take each of those components and try to analyze them, try to talk about in details those obstacles, and how to overcome them. But in summary, honestly, I think this is just the main thing that we have to know, that we have to recognize the major components, right? So that whenever there's an error somewhere, we are not having the desired result in the children, we know where to go to. Okay, probably the teacher system is faulty, right? Or the family component is faulty, or the environment component is faulty. Or is it the children themselves, they are having something they are battling with in their own mindset, right? Or is it the teaching system or the teaching methods? Is it faulty, or is it not efficient or not effective? Right? So these are why we have to know what are the major and the essential components of an ideal Quran learning system. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to benefit myself and every one of you with this short presentation. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make all our kids, the corners of our eyes, and make all of them those who will be the lovers of the Quran, and those who will walk and live their life with the Quran, and as those who will take the glory of Islam to the next level, inshallah. We pray Allah to grant us, the parents, and all those who are contributing to teaching the Quran to the kids, that Allah grant us success in this life and on the day of Qiyamah, and Allah give us the reward that we think that we want to have with Him on the day of Qiyamah. بإذن اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك ونشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. We don't have people to ask questions today, so inshallah, so if you have comments after the webinar, inshallah, you can drop your questions below in the comment box, and we'll try to give response to the questions as soon as possible. Assalamu alaikum wa